So, before we really get into it, I'd like to address a couple of points off script here about what this is, what advanced mindfulness for beginners really means. And the first thing I want to talk about is why mindfulness is relevant to the Jedi path, and how is it really connected. So we all know that the Jedi path is very multifaceted. It has a lot of various factors that combine to create something very unique. Our love of everything nerdy is very important to us, and our love of self-development is very important to us. And mindfulness is this sort of perennial ideology that pervades a lot of different cultures. And every culture and every religious belief has had its own form of mindfulness come about. So really it's quite important then that if we have a lifestyle of any kind, that mindfulness is a very central portion to our personal development. And we're going to see today in this presentation how not only did mindfulness come about in various cultures, but how it's represented in the Star Wars lore, all of the mythos, and how it relates to our one of our most important documents, the Jedi Compass, which has just been added as a lecture, Jedi Compass 101. I'm pretty sure it's at some point tomorrow. So be sure and tune in to that. So I would like to start off by reading a quick excerpt from the Jedi Compass. There will be a lot of those today. But I want to talk about the point in the Jedi Compass that is spiritual art. A spiritual art may be as simple as developing meditation, but it can go far beyond this. A Jedi may choose to develop a spiritual art aimed at connecting them with, quote-unquote, the Force, through healing, seeking guidance, or simply developing their own self-awareness. And with that, we will formally begin. So hello, welcome to Advanced Mindfulness for Beginners. Today we will be looking at the subject of mindfulness as a set of steps one can follow, and looking at how it can be viewed perennially in respect to the various traditions that have mindfulness as part of their teachings. So I once read a book when I was studying magic called Advanced Magic for Beginners by Alan Chapman. The book deals with the subject of magic in the late 20th century and moving into the early 21st century. He posited that magic had been basically desecrated from its holiest and most sacred existence by what he termed postmodernist thinking. He believed that magic was essentially devoid of any real power because the people who were making the magic put their own meanings onto it instead of buying into three very important concepts that worked together to give magic its efficacy. So let's explore them. And this is a direct quote from the book. Magic is an art because it has no laws, only arbitrary aesthetics that dictate method. As long as you decide what an experience means, you can do anything and it works. Magic is a science because it has a methodology, however arbitrary, with results that can be corroborated by peers through independent inquiry. And magic is a culture because it has implicit social and ethical considerations. So it struck me that mindfulness also has these three concepts that guide it. Mindfulness is an art because it exists as a personal expression of experience. So being mindful is part of any creative action followed by the human person. It also has arbitrary aesthetics that dictate methodology. And we'll go into more of this later on. In fact, that's sort of the center of this entire lecture. Mindfulness is a science because it has a methodology, and the results can be and have been replicated in studies. And of course, mindfulness is also a culture because it is inseparable from the social and ethical considerations that make up its practices. So just because of all of those factors, seeing as mindfulness and magic sort of have these same three components, I decided to name this lecture basically the same thing. This is Advanced Mindfulness for Beginners. It struck me that, let's see here. Yes, so it struck me that there are also a lot of types of magicians. There are witches, Wiccans, sorcerers, druids, spellcasters, all manner of people, high magic and low magic. The same can be said about mindfulness. There are Buddhists, but there is meditation and mindfulness in the yoga traditions of Hindu followers, meditation in Zen. Even in the Christian tradition, we have a contemplative practice. And Westerners haven't just started appropriating Eastern mindfulness practices in the last century. Of course, they have done that as well, but the Western contemplative practice goes back at least to the Desert Father monks of the 3rd century CE. Christianity has had mindfulness almost all along, and that's just one example of mindfulness reaching beyond one set of cultures. And the question is, what exactly is mindfulness, and why have so many cultures found it to be essential to their clergy's spiritual development? Remember that mindfulness really only came into the public in the last 100 years or so, if even that. This practice began as something only really that clergy did, and this is true in the Western tradition as well. So I want to take a moment and ask for people to enter their experiences with mindfulness in your life. What traditions do you follow? Do you have a practice? Could you define mindfulness? What does it mean to you? So if you want to, you can enter your thoughts into the chat. And of course, the prompts are there on the screen for you. If you'd like to share, I will wait just a couple of minutes to see if anybody wants to talk back in the chat. I'll mention personally of a Christian practice, and most of that revolves around prayer, but the prayers are very, very connected to like mantra meditations. Things like Jesus Christ, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. People will repeat that over and over and over again in a prayer, or Jesus Christ, Son of God, I trust you, over and over again. A lot of these practices date back hundreds of years and are part of almost maybe like a neuro-linguistic programming, which I find to be a pretty interesting practice. Well, it's okay, Karen. Thank you for joining back in. So we didn't get any shares for this one, but I will move on and we can continue our discussion. Oh, yes, please. Yeah, go for it. Any thoughts on what mindfulness means to you, what traditions you follow? Do you have a practice? What does it mean to you? I'm doing everything through text just to make things easier. So if you want to enter your thoughts into the chat, I'll be happy to address them. We have plenty of time. And while we're waiting, I'll move on and I'll catch you if you share something in the chat. Thanks, Karen. So back to the presentation. Mindfulness is defined as the practice of developing focused mental states while acknowledging and accepting emotional experiences, thoughts, feelings, and sensations as part of a therapeutic and personal development. Mindfulness and meditation, therefore, are inextricably linked. In fact, in most traditions, a form of mindfulness and meditation is used. To go back to the Christian example, they have centering prayer, and that is where they adopt a contemplative posture and pray a single word or short phrase over and over again, just like I shared a couple of minutes ago. And of course, this may sound like transcendental meditation to you, and that's because they are similar techniques. Mindfulness has a few different parts to it, and I will organize mindfulness for you into 5 simple steps. I got these 5 steps originally from a meditation teacher named Jeff Warren. On a podcast called 10% Happier with Dan Harris, Jeff spoke about how to develop mindfulness when meditation isn't really an option. And Jeff took the opportunity to break down how he saw mindfulness in several parts. He listed 5 of those. And I took those, and with the help of one of my good friends, Cora Winstead, I developed the 5 C's of mindfulness. They are commitment, concentration, compassion, composure, and circulation. And we'll get into what those mean one by one as we get into the practice portion of today's workshop. And while we're here, I might take a moment to direct your thoughts to the chat, where Karen says, mindfulness means taking time to notice the moment. Notice yourself, your emotions, and your surroundings, not thinking about the future or the past. No worries, no regrets. Purely being aware of the moment. At least this is what I practice. I like to stop on my hikes, rest, and be aware of the forest, the air, and the beauty of where I am. That's beautiful, Karen. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. So some people are allergic to the word meditation. And I know people who are always complaining about how they're working towards being more mindful, but they hate meditation. They don't like sitting still and not doing anything of importance or what they view of as importance. Usually these people are so used to the go, 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 they don't see the value in doing nothing. Perhaps they're afraid that if they stop, they won't go anymore. Perhaps they're right. Both are frightening possibilities. But meditation isn't a scary thing. We'll break down the steps of meditation and how to go about it in this workshop. But simply put, meditation is exercise. Just like you go to the gym for the body, you need to go to the gym, but for the mind. Work out the mind. Many people don't like meditation because it's boring. How many people find the gym lifting weights to be super exhilarating? To be fair, you can always find ways to work the body and get strong without ever stepping foot in a gym, but you're still exercising. And meditation follows this pattern exactly. And mindfulness is wellness for the entire being. Meditation, being exercise for the mind, therefore, goes hand in hand with this. They are intertwined subjects. One cannot exist without the other. And just like postmodernism has stolen the meaning from magic, has capitalism and profit-driven business stolen the heart of mindfulness and meditation alike? So how many memes do you see on Facebook about finding inner peace? What happens when we commodify being fully human? And that messes with us. Suddenly the goals of meditation classes aren't to help people find their truth. It's to sell tickets. If you tell a bunch of people they aren't getting better, how many people do you think will come back? The same thing happens in McDojos, where they basically sell advancement. It's a screwed up system. Mindfulness has been co-opted by capitalism. And yes, this is about appropriation. This is about imperialism and colonialism. It's about commodifying cultures and diminishing truth in favor of profit. And I hope by giving you this blueprint for practice, you'll be able to more vigilantly identify the true mindfulness from the mindfulness that people are trying to sell you. And I see here there are some comments now in the chat. Oh yes, Christopher, the rosary is something I did for a few years back when I was a kid and was shocked by how little I didn't know about how, when I was looking into it for a class. Meditation is something that I've used on and off, but I have looked deeper into it than ever, finding that it is so helpful because I start to see how many people might understand my actions. I have even started to take a breath and try to understand the outcomes. That's great. Yes, I love that. I love that. And of course, Ari has given us the Mindfulness. Lovely. Perfect. Very, very true. Okay. I told you that I got these 5 C's originally from Jeff Warren. And Jeff Warren's whole mission is to democratize mental health and mindfulness. He wants to change the guru model that keeps so many people hostage under false pretenses and under systemic pressure to pleasure the guru. Just look at names like Chogyam Trungpa, or the Sakyong Nippon, or Osho, or hell, even Jim Jones. The guru model under capitalism doesn't work. We must be able to see mindfulness as the right of all people, not the privilege of those that can afford it. So let's begin by breaking down the steps of mindfulness so that we can become advanced practitioners, keep a beginner mindset, and hopefully dismantle spiritual materialism more and more each day. And like I have written here on the screen, we're going to go an in-depth exploration of each of the 5 C's, relating it back to our guiding documents, the Jedi Compass, and the lore through the Star Wars movies. So here we go. How to get started with mindfulness, using meditation as a vehicle for exploration. The first C, commitment. Mindfulness begins with committing to the process. Have you ever begun a project and let it fizzle out in the first week or even the first month? It is always so disappointing to me to watch something good fall out of my life. And after years of being inconsistent, I began to ask myself what the key was to follow through on these big projects. I asked some of my friends what they thought, and some of their answers will sound familiar to you. Quote unquote, perhaps you're biting off too much at once. Try taking smaller bites out of your bigger goals. Quote unquote, perhaps you don't actually want to do the project, so it was right to let it go. Quote unquote, perhaps you shouldn't set your aspirations so high at first. Quote unquote, maybe you're just lazy and you need to get over that. When I was thinking of these responses, my body felt very heavy, like these answers were dancing around the point, but they weren't the point itself. Instead of providing a solution, they were just pointing out flaws, and incomplete flaws at that. I pondered these thoughts even more throughout the following months, most of the time in the back of my head. They would occasionally rise to the surface, but they would sink under as soon as they appeared. But one day, it all sort of came together when listening to that Jeff Warren interview. And he said that consistency is more powerful than any one act. Even if the act is big, it's not as powerful as consistency. My thoughts immediately went to the concept of erosion. When you see a pathway made of rock formed by water, you must be thinking that's insane. How did something as soft as water create this pathway? The answer is consistency. And I won't get into the science of erosion, but we probably all learned about it in school. But the point is that even something soft can break the hardest surface if given enough time and consistent effort. So I put 2 and 2 together. I wasn't taking on projects that were too hard or too big. I wasn't following through because I didn't have the discipline to be consistent. I wasn't committed to the process because I had never developed the muscle of consistency within me. How many of us have never had to really be disciplined? Even if you have a master's degree, you may not have built up those muscles for real, but they are a superpower. They are how you, as a soft bit of water, can carve the Grand Canyon. You can't build a house with a stroke of the tool. You need to do it every day. So the challenge I issue is this. Come to the cushion, which are 2 more C's, by the way. If you're the type of person who comes to a workshop and sits for an hour, like this one, but then goes home and never looks at the material again, this is for you. And we're going to start coming to the cushion right now. So this is sort of an in-practice kind of thing. And I would like for you to take a moment while you're listening here to close your eyes. Be in the darkness of yourself. Begin to focus on the being of your body. Feel the weight of your body on the chair upon which you sit. Feel the heaviness of your head. Feel the way your arms want to sit by your side. Unclench your jaw. What does your tongue feel like? Get curious about your body. Feel a white light wherever your attention takes you inside yourself. Does your attention leave your body? Ask it gently to come back, but don't force it. And I will let you sit here for a few more seconds with that sort of awareness. Good. That's your first day of sitting practice right there. Just about a minute or so long, maybe a little longer. And if you meditate for 1 minute a day for 365 days, you will have meditated for 6 more hours a year than you would have otherwise. And that adds up over time. So how do you come to the cushion when you're having a bad day? A day where practice seems unlikely? There are 3, count them 3, steps you can take. Commit to coming to the cushion whether or not you intend to meditate. I really recommend just showing up. You might surprise yourself and meditate anyway, or you might sit for 1 minute and then move on. It counts. Even if you spend the time thinking about video games, what you'll eat for dinner, or that one comment somebody told you 3 days ago. And once you're on the cushion, meditate if you feel like it. I guarantee you, after a week of coming to the cushion without meditating, you are going to get bored and you will try it. Keep going. Don't give in to your impulse. You're developing discipline, not meditation skills. One must come before the other. Once you meditate consistently, begin to increase the time you sit on the cushion. 1 minute turns into 2, turns into 5, turns into 10, 15, 30. And then suddenly a year later, you might be sitting for 20 minutes twice a day. Who knows? Everybody's journey is different. A question a lot of beginners have is, where and when should I practice? You know, I recommend the first thing you do upon waking is meditating. But if that's not possible, choosing a specific time each day has proven to be powerful. It is the time equivalent of coming to the cushion. You promise yourself to be disciplined with this time, and you will be disciplined with all of your time. The same is true with your meditation space. A lot of people think you should have a sacred space for meditation, and I think the sacred aspect is the honor with which you view your space. So if you're meditating on your floor, is that clean? If you're meditating outside, are you honoring the grass and the earth that supports you? If you're meditating in your bedroom, is that space where you spend your holy time? Find spaces that energize you and connect you to the creative force of the universe. If you feel connected to the force, your space is the right space. Oh, thank you, Seamus. Yeah, habit formation called placeholding. Yes, I've heard of that. That's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing. And so here we are to the end of our first C, commitment. I would like to take a moment to relate each step in this process to the Jedi Compass. And I will also relate each step to the lore, a moment in the movies and TV shows that exemplifies each part of mindfulness training. And of course, for the Jedi Compass, addresses commitment through its mandate that Jedi have discipline and responsibility. When Jedi have discipline, they don't follow their impulses. They trust their inner wisdom to guide their actions, and they can see their present moment with objectivity, which is another piece of the Jedi Compass, And when a Jedi has responsibility, they recognize that committing to their cause has a power unlike anything. A Jedi who holds himself to high standards will not be swayed by their baser instincts and impulses. Commitment to the order and to the force is a valuable part of developing mastery. In the lore, Yoda implores Luke to stay and train on Dagobah, to finish what he needs to learn before fighting Vader. He even suggests Luke sacrifice his friends so that he may complete what he begins. Luke ignores this advice, follows his baser instincts to save his friends, and loses his hand in the process. This is not a judgment on Luke's choice at all. It makes for great art, but it is an observation that can still be made. Had Luke finished his training, there may not have been a need for an episode 6 at all. While Luke's sacrifice makes for good entertainment, he didn't have to fail the way he did. Be committed to your training. Listen to your heart, and don't let your emotions run the show. Luke redeemed himself in episode 6 exactly through this process. His commitment to pacifism inspired Vader's good to return and led to the destruction of a force of evil. So once you're committing to this process, you could stop here. You could absolutely spend the rest of your life building the discipline muscle and nothing else. And you'll have made an enormous difference in your life. You will feel discipline in all areas. Nothing is separate. Everything is connected. This is why you're supposed to make your bed in the morning. It is a powerful indicator of how the day will go. So that is important unto itself. However, if you want to take your practice deeper, we will explore the next C in the 5 C's, the second C, concentration. And just as a note, after we finish this C, we'll probably take a quick break. So stick with me for another 10 minutes or so, and then we'll take a quick break before we do the 3rd, 4th, and 5th C's. All right. Once you've begun building the commitment and discipline muscles, you will have an opportunity to build the next in the series of mental muscles, concentration. Concentration is fairly self-explanatory, but it has a special connotation within mindfulness. Concentration is all about developing the ability to be singularly focused on an action. And in mindfulness, this is helpful because it will help us go deeper into our thoughts and beliefs. We will have the mental power to spend time with emotions that arise within us. And we will then have the ability to change our beliefs. And further, that will propagate into our actions, bleeding into the way that we make decisions. Concentration, along with commitment, are superpowers for our spiritual and physical beings. Meditation has a long history with concentration. In the Eastern traditions, there are some that teach concentration before any other step. In shamatha meditation, from the Buddhist traditions, it's all about developing concentration. In Christianity, we have centering prayer. In ceremonial magic traditions, there are trance meditations that do similar things. Concentration is key to all of the mindfulness paths. And here are the steps to using meditation as a vehicle for developing concentration. First, you're going to want to find an object that you can focus on. Traditionally, the object is the breath, or the rising and the falling of the chest, the feeling of the air passing back and forth through the nostrils. However, there are those who feel anxiety when focusing on the breath. Recently, topics around breath have been contentious. People in power structures have limited the air that the oppressed can use, even strangling them to death. And that's not metaphorical. So if the breath brings up feelings like that, I recommend choosing a different object. And here on the screen are a few to choose from. You may look at the pendulum, something, like an object that kind of goes back and forth, a flame, a mantra, body awareness. And when you begin this practice, you'll find that your mind will not want you to remain focused on that object. You will want to scurry from one place to the next, clinging to any distraction that passes by. You may begin to think about what's for dinner. You may be thinking about the to-do list you didn't finish today. You may even be thinking about past traumas that take advantage of the silence you're practicing. Whatever these distractions arise, and you bring your attention to them consciously, gently ask yourself to bring that attention back to your chosen object. We're going to try this in a minute, so don't fear if it's not making sense quite yet. Every time you do this practice, you'll be challenged in different ways. I find I have different distractions depending on how long I practice and how long I sit. Sometimes I sit for 5 minutes and nothing really happens, and I think about inconsequential things. Sometimes I sit for half an hour and I don't think of anything at all. But also there are times when my most traumatic and difficult sessions are a minute long, when I just try to breathe and the whole time I'm feeling a tightness in my chest because of some internal issue that comes up. So let's take a moment to do a minute-long meditation together. Maybe we can support one another as we move through these difficult days. Find a comfortable position and close your eyes. Take a moment to feel your body's presence on the ground. Feel your feet touching the ground. If you're in a chair, maybe your bottom and legs are supporting you on the ground. Choose an object. Maybe it's the breath, maybe it's not. The feeling of your arms, the little swaying back and forth in your body. Follow the natural movement of the object, up and down, side to side, in and out. If during this time your mind wanders, gently ask it to return to the object you've chosen. Don't force it, just ask. I'll give you a few seconds of silence here. All right. Now take a deep breath. Feel yourself coming back into your body. As you open your eyes and return to a normal state, debrief. Ask yourself how it was. Start with just 1 minute of this every day, maybe 5. Build it up over time to 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes. The more you do it, the more you will enjoy it. But it takes a while. It's a skill that you have to build. Not many people like the Stairmaster at the gym, but eventually doing it again and again, we come to enjoy that form of exercise. Well, I don't, but most people do. And it's a workout that is rewarding in the long run. Yeah, I feel you. I feel you, Allie. I understand. She said that she doesn't. Okay, so the second C, concentration in the Jedi Compass. The Jedi Compass mandates that all Jedi learn self-awareness, both internal and external. The first step in developing this awareness is to learn how to direct awareness itself. You have to build concentration in order to direct your mind's focus. Here we have a quote, and I'll read this for you. A Jedi works to become aware of their emotions and things which make them, quote-unquote, tick. They learn of their flaws and strengths, seeking to reconcile a life with those flaws which they cannot change and the strengths they have been blessed with. In this, a Jedi must be constantly looking inward for their motivations, their directions, what moves them, and why they allow it to do so. In the lore, Yoda teaches Luke about concentration. Remember how connected concentration and the Force are. I mean, Yoda made Luke do handstands and move rocks. Do you know how much concentration it takes to do just a handstand alone? Not even mentioning doing it while Yoda sits on you? And then you have to move rocks with your mind. Would it surprise you to know that the concentration needed to do this helps Luke to move the rocks? In fact, Luke was so concentrated that he was in tune with the Force, and that allowed him to even lift R2-D2 along with the rocks. It's Luke's lack of faith, which was why he could not channel his connection to the Force to lift the X-Wing. But concentration and connection to the Force, God, what have you, it's all the same thing. It's all intertwined. Developing concentration is extremely valuable. And like with commitment, you could stop here and have a supremely wonderful life in stage 2. You could learn to focus with discipline and commitment. Just think of all the wonderful things you can accomplish by working on these 2 steps. There is a reason that most beginning meditation courses stop here. My first weekend retreat, I did it with Shambhala International, only came to the second C. It only came to concentration. The vast majority of meditators stay here, and that's wonderful. But if you want to deepen your practice, you will want to move on to the third C in this series, which is developing mindfulness through compassion. The third C, compassion. The next step in mindful living is to recognize and live compassionately. Once you have learned to focus, you need something to focus on, besides the breath or whatever object you choose. In the mindfulness community, we recognize that pointing our energies outward in a focused way brings out major change in the world. In our worlds and in the world in general, because our thoughts shape our reality, they really define the way our worlds function. Wouldn't it be important then to have a world that is filled with compassionate living? Because you get back what you put out. You reap what you sow. So if you want a good life, we need to express good outwardly to others. But of course, I know some people are skeptical when it comes to doing selfless things, even though we're in a group of Jedi. A while back, like in March, I took a course from Yale through Coursera, an online course website, called The Science of Happiness and Well-Being. In this course, the instructor cited this study. Happy people become happier through kindness. A counting kindness intervention, published in the Journal of Happiness Studies, which is actually a journal that I really would like to read, I think. People simply counted their kind acts for a week. They didn't actually change their behavior at all, but they simply engaged in the passive act of counting the kindnesses that they actually already did on a weekly basis. And they were able to view themselves as kinder people. And when they viewed themselves as kinder people, they became kinder, even more kind than they were when they were just passively counting. So it stands to reason that Qui-Gon Jinn's quip, "Focus determines your reality," is true. And this brings ourselves to the meditative practice of counting our kindnesses. Except, in our case, we are going to basically count those people who bless us. The Buddhists have metta meditation. Christians call it intercession. And of course, there are some others here. Gratitude journals, all that wonderful stuff. Now, metta meditation. This is what the Buddhists say. They have this lovely saying: may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, and may you be at peace. There are, of course, infinite variations on this simple prayer, but one thing I found across all Buddhist traditions is that they begin by addressing this particular set of phrases to themselves, then to somebody they care about, then to somebody they don't feel close to, or maybe somebody difficult to pray for, and then to the whole world. Christians have intercession. They pray for people. Just like you might send a prayer list to the church, people will ask God to take care of these people. It may be somebody close to them or not, but anytime a Christian prays for somebody else, that is the same practice of compassion. The Christians also have the Lord's Prayer, which are prayers for all people as part of the liturgy. Quote unquote, "Give us this day our daily bread, forgive us as we forgive those who sin against us." Same concept. Of course, I think the question people have at this point is, what about prayer or meditation equates to physical, compassionate living? Well, I'll point you to the same study that I mentioned earlier. All these people did were count the good things that happened to them, and they became actually kinder people. The same is true with compassion. If you pray or think about those around you, that their lives will be better, that is your focus. That becomes your focus, and you're far more likely to see that through with your actions. And even if that isn't their life, even if it isn't their life specifically, it will be somebody's life that you improve. It's about seeing the worth of all people, that everybody is worth praying for, that everybody is worth seeing in a good light. And that will change your perspective. It doesn't happen overnight, but it will happen over time. One of the thorny issues with compassionate prayer is that some people view it as an excuse not to take action. They say thoughts and prayers are not enough. They are right. They are not enough. Thoughts and prayers are the germination of compassionate practice, but we must connect them to the rest of the steps in developing mindful living. So what I'm saying is that the third C, compassion, on its own doesn't mean anything. But if you combine it with commitment, and if you combine it with concentration, and if you combine it with the other two that we will explore, it will become exceedingly powerful. Maybe your meditative practice is more active. Maybe you do metta meditation by serving in a soup kitchen, or donating clothes a few times a year. Maybe you donate to Black Lives Matter groups. However you show your gratitude, it needs to be intentional and focused. So metta meditation is part of that, or at least just thinking good thoughts toward people. And I know a lot of New Agers that will say that they're sending good vibes. That's a great practice, but it's only the beginning. So let us take a moment to practice a basic metta meditation together, another in-practice session. We will do 4 layers. Pray for yourself, pray for somebody close to you, then pray for somebody whom you don't like, and then finally pray for the world. And I shall guide you through it. And here we have Christopher. Well done is better than well said. Yes. Yes, it is. It's very, very true. I do think that a lot of people say, this sort of thing, well done is better than well said. I think a lot of people use that as an excuse not to practice compassionate thinking. But I think it's just like yin and yang. These things go together. They must both be a part of your practice. All right, so back to our metta meditation. Let's take a moment and to get comfortable and breathe. Find your object of meditation and focus. Center yourself on your object. And then let's repeat these words after I say them. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I be at peace. Good. Now choose somebody very close to you whom you love. Somebody it's not going to be difficult to pray these sentences to. And substitute the words this person with the name of that person for whom you're praying. May this person be happy. May this person be healthy. May this person be safe. May this person be at peace. Good. Now choose somebody you don't like or somebody you don't know, but somebody you know needs compassion. Maybe a bully, maybe a corrupt politician. This one's often the most difficult, but do it anyway. May this person be happy. May this person be healthy. May this person be safe. May this person be at peace. Good. I appreciate you indulging me on that. And now to end this session, we'll meditate for the whole world. May all people be happy. May all people be healthy. May all people be safe. And may all people be at peace. And now open your eyes and come back to the present feeling. And that's basically metta meditation. Quite simple. Of course, if you were really doing a metta meditation, you might do it a couple times, substituting in different people. Whatever works for you. You may also choose to do it in a less formal way. That's also fine. So, the Jedi Compass, bringing the third C into our supporting documents. The Jedi Compass has a couple of sections that relate to compassionate practice. Duty to all is a good example of this. Jedi values life. Jedi values communities made up of those lives. And as such, a Jedi serves that community. A Jedi also develops external awareness. They learn their roles within groups and fulfill the needs of the group wherever they end up. And Jedi are also tolerant. Quote-unquote, tolerance is not about agreement, but it is about showing respect for the freedom of a person's choices and to respect their choices. In the lore, I don't even think I need to pick out a single example of Jedi acting compassionately the best they can, but I will point out one philosophical example. Ben Kenobi remarks that the Force binds the galaxy together, basically stating that everything is connected. Yoda says, luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. We are not just individual bodies, we are members of a large consciousness of people. Whether you have spiritual beliefs or not, you can see that your actions affect people either adversely or not. You have the option to positively influence everything you come into contact with. It is up to you to do with what you do with this responsibility. But Jedi hold themselves to the highest standards of living. It isn't about me. It's about us. It's about we. That's how we make change. That's how we develop ourselves as full, mindful human beings. Just like with all of the other steps, you could spend the rest of your life here, developing kindness and compassion within yourself and outside of yourself. There are many people who live fulfilled lives just resting in the presence of compassion. But if you're ready to take your practice into the practical, we can explore the next step. The fourth C, composure. Composure is often the most misunderstood step in mindfulness development. And I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts on the subject of composure before I get too deep into it. In mindfulness circles, composure is called equanimity. What do you think when you hear the words equanimity or composure? You can write in the chat if you feel like sharing. I know that when I first heard the word composure, I thought it was related maybe to the word compose, because I write music. So my first thought was compose music, put things together. I thought that might be related to that. Seamus says control of self. Oh, I love that. I love that. Control of self, self-control. To calm oneself, to recenter yourself. That's what Christopher says. I love that. All very, very, very good examples. Very good definitions. To hold a mindset. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Karen. Really great thoughts, guys. Thank you so much for sharing. So my definition, composure is the act of mental calmness, especially in the face of difficult circumstances. So this, in essence, is the difference between reacting and responding to stimuli, especially negative stimuli. Ali, you are jumping ahead. Thank you very much. We will get to the Jedi Compass soon. Overcoming aggression is what she says. Oh, Lord. Okay, so responding versus reacting, especially to negative stimuli. So even though equanimity is difficult to wrap one's mind around, it often comes very easily to people who have spent considerable time in the other three steps of the mindfulness path. If one is committed, concentrating, and compassionate, they will find themselves acting composed, even in the face of strife. The deeper we get into mindfulness practice, the more it snowballs into the last few C's. I want you all to remember that, because it's very important. Building the foundations of commitment, concentration, and compassion will help develop the final two C's very easily. And yes, welcome, Punisher. Welcome. So, let's explore equanimity as a process, as a concept, actually. Hello. The Insight Meditation Center, run by Joseph Goldstein and Sharon Salzberg, is a wonderful organization committed to helping people explore mindfulness, bringing traditionally Buddhist concepts to the United States. The following information is taken from an article on equanimity from their website, which I will provide in the script and the slides later on. So, let's look at this. While some may think of equanimity as a dry neutrality or a cool aloofness, mature equanimity produces a radiance and warmth of being. The Buddha described a mind filled with equanimity as abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. Equanimity is a protection from the 8 worldly winds: praise and blame, success and failure, pleasure and pain, fame and disrepute. Becoming attached to or excessively elated with success, praise, fame, or pleasure can be a setup for suffering when the winds change. For example, success can be wonderful, but if it leads to arrogance, we have more to lose in future challenges. Becoming personally invested in praise can tend toward conceit. Identifying with failure, we may feel incompetent or inadequate. Reacting to pain, we may become discouraged. If we understand or feel that our sense of inner well-being is independent of the 8 winds, we are more likely to remain on an even keel in their midst. I want to repeat that last sentence because that's the whole point. If we understand or feel that our sense of inner well-being is independent of the 8 winds, we are more likely to remain on an even keel in their midst. So, we have many methods to protect ourselves from these 8 worldly winds, and I would like to list out these 7 mental qualities that can help build equanimity. Integrity or virtue. Faith. Faith is the way we can develop equanimity. By developing faith as a verb, acting in a way that is right and in line with good values, we can meet the challenges of life. Developing our strength of mind and body are also very important. This is the step of mindfulness where we apply what we learned to aspects of our personal development. We can be compassionate to ourselves. We can be concentrated on our studies, on our schoolwork. We can be committed to the causes we want to support and our friends' and family's well-beings. Our own well-being is also very important. Caring about ourselves is enough. Treating yourself to a book or some tea, a relaxing afternoon. Develop a sense of inner calm in this way. The more we develop wisdom, the more we can react to events in our lives that are tumultuous with some degree of surety and stillness. That's called responding. We won't be swayed so easily. Like the tree, our roots are strong, but our limbs are flexible. It's all about balance. Strong roots come from age and experience. Getting deeper, we can explore insight, a deep seeing into the nature of things as they are. We can see the impermanence of all things, celebrating a loss, remembering somebody's life is a wonderful thing. Dying and loss are a part of life, and they can be responded to with calmness. The final method is freedom. When we free ourselves of our reactive tendencies, we can learn to respond with stillness and wisdom. That's the key to composure. These are the 7 mental qualities that can help build equanimity. The Jedi Compass. The Jedi Compass covers equanimity in a lot of ways. And the big section in the Jedi Compass I want to focus on here is the one of overcoming. Overcoming aggression, overcoming recklessness, and overcoming attachment. When Jedi are overcoming aggression, they're specifically looking to reduce their reactivity and increasing their ability to respond. Relating it back to the methods with which we combat the 8 worldly winds, we develop our mental resilience and our wisdom. We don't see anything as a threat, we see everything as an opportunity. Being prepared for our triggers to upset us will lead to a stronger sense of ownership over these experiences. We won't any longer simply be objects of rage reacting. We will have ownership over all of our experiences. And agency gives us power. When we overcome recklessness, we are observing the risks we take. Notice that the compass doesn't really say that we don't take risks, We just don't take unnecessary ones. When we respond with calmness and with surety, we can make sure that the risks we take are calculated and will be fruitful. We become insightful, looking at reality with a magnifying glass, really seeing all its requisite parts. We develop our mindset and our bodies so that we can take risks that will result in good things, and risks in the good sense are almost always synonymous with vulnerability. Being truly open to the possibilities, laying your belly bare. You are open to the greatest outcomes, both good and bad. And that's why it's important to temper our desire for recklessness with wisdom, insight, and resiliency. Punisher says this sounds like personal frequency attracting to good things. Yes, exactly. Very good. I love that. Lastly, when we overcome attachment, we are practicing the method of freedom. The compass says that overcoming attachment is not about giving away everything you own. It's about forward movement. It's about not allowing our past experiences to hold dominion over our present selves. We can mourn the loss of a loved one, but if it freezes us in pity and sadness for years, we have only ourselves to blame. So when Yoda told Anakin to let go of his loved one so he could be a good Jedi, Yoda forgot to mention that it's important to feel the sadness, to feel the rage, but not to let it rule us. If only Anakin had felt comfortable being vulnerable to those who actually had his self-interest in mind. If only he had told Obi-Wan his feelings, the Council, Padme. He was led down the dark path because it seemed like only somebody who wanted to manipulate him was open to his deepest secrets and fears. Learn from Anakin's mistake. Learn to trust. Find people to be vulnerable with. Develop friendships that are brotherly and sisterly, and you will not go down the same path. The biggest example of equanimity in Star Wars is probably Luke facing the Emperor. Luke, filled with rage over Vader saying he would turn his sister to the dark side, channels that anger into his lightsaber, cutting off Vader's hand and disarming him. He realizes his reaction and decides to respond instead. He throws away his lightsaber, effectively disarming himself, putting his proverbial belly in the air. The Emperor takes advantage of this, pummeling him with Force lightning. But it is this vulnerability that allows Vader to see that his son needs love. It prompts him to be better than the Jedi who shut him down all those years ago. It is precisely Vader's compassion that saves him. Vader responds to the Emperor's action by retaliating, lifting the Emperor over his head, and then he plummets him into the reactor of the Death Star. Let's do a brief visualization exercise to help us envision how we might act with equanimity. So take a moment to close your eyes again. I want you to imagine a confrontation you had in the past 6 months or so. Imagine an argument or a fight. How did you respond to the other person in the argument? Was it more of a reaction? Take a minute or two to play the scenario out in your mind, observing just how you reacted or responded. And I'll give you a few seconds to do this. Once you've done this, take a moment to imagine how that circumstance might have played out differently. If you responded, imagine how it would have gone if you reacted. And if you reacted, imagine how it might have gone if you responded. There are differences in equanimity. Wisdom, freedom, stillness, calmness. All parts of an equanimity response. And once you've done this, open your eyes and come back to the body. Thank you for doing that with me. Practicing equanimity in your mind is just as important as doing it for real. Use your growing mindfulness to practice support. Rehearse equanimity in your mind. If you have any, if you want to share any of your experiences, please do so in the chat. Punisher asks, would Vader still save Luke if he hadn't dropped his saber? I have to wonder. I mean, something tells me that it was Luke's commitment to good that helped Vader to see how powerful it was. He also, of course, probably couldn't stand his son suffering the same way that he did. So who knows? Who knows, really? Luckily, we got the story that we did. Another practice of equanimity is naming emotions. Karen says, I have to use composure in my bank call center to rise above my anger and strive to be helpful and polite. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a very, very practical skill. I'm glad that it has served you well. So, in practice, we name our emotions. When you're doing a sitting meditation, notice the emotions and thoughts that come up. Take a moment to name them. Anger, fear, discomfort. Their power will wane the more you name them. Just keep bringing yourself back to the breath. So, you can actually relate to these. Oh, we got one more. What's this here? Kicking my mother out of the house was the best reaction I could have done. Because if she were to stay in the house, it would have just gotten worse, to the point of someone getting hurt or cops being called, as she was not thinking, and she was starting hitting points that turned me into anger. Yeah, Christopher, that's real. That's powerful. I would say that your foresight of knowing where things would go is an example of inner wisdom, and therefore it's a response, and therefore a part of equanimity. Very good. Right decision. Very well done. So, in the progression of Jedi training, if initiates learn mostly the first two C's, commitment and concentration, and apprentices learn the next two C's, compassion and composure, what sets the knight apart? That is the final C in our workshop today. Circulation. Ross. Ross gives us wonderful wisdom here. I hate having to remove people from my life. However, it has been a good lesson to learn when the time to carefully navigate doing so. Very true. So I think the lesson here is, as everybody has so wonderfully stated, that when engaging with composure, it isn't about just trusting your instincts. It's about considering your instincts with all of your wisdom combined, which means it's not knee-jerk. It's listening to that knee-jerk response, or that reaction, and deciding to respond in some way. And in fact, that's really the key to our major Jedi code: emotion yet peace, ignorance yet knowledge. That's really the difference here. The fifth C, circulation. This step, the final step, is probably the simplest, but it's the most important step in developing mindfulness. Circulation, as you may have guessed, refers to these practices being spread through all areas of your life. We're spreading everything to the far reaches and crannies of our existence. When we circulate, we take these dedicated practices of commitment, concentration, compassion, and composure and apply them to our daily living. We eat more mindfully, with dedication, concentration, and with compassion toward our bodies. We'll feel equanimity when we want to eat junk food and conflate overeating with emotional coping. We'll start to feel equanimity, and we'll start to treat others with more respect. We will listen to them. We'll care for them with our hearts and our actions. And we'll even argue with them, holding more composure within ourselves. We'll take our studies more seriously, committing to what must be done, concentrating on our materials, loving our subject, dealing with failure, using composure and equanimity to develop a better perspective. As you can see, this is a natural progression that mindfulness will take. You work with your butt on the cushion, and then you take it outside, and you'll fail. But because you have commitment and compassion, you'll respond to that failure with equanimity. You learn the skills, and then you apply them, not in a vacuum. You learn the letters of the alphabet so that you can make words. Then you can make sentences, then paragraphs, then books. The same is so for the 5 C's of mindfulness. So relating this to the Jedi compass, there isn't a single point on the Jedi compass that talks about circulation as an independent concept, but if you look at the document as a whole, you will see that everything mentioned on it is designed to help you focus on applying skills that you can learn. Any single part of the compass can follow the 5 C's, as it is a perennial methodology. The whole point of the compass is to guide the way. Mindfulness does this, using the first 4 C's in conjunction with circulation. As within, so without. Now, as a special bonus for this presentation, I want to include mindfulness without meditation, alternatives for those who cannot sit. And as a point, I would like to offer that in just a couple of minutes, we will have a big chat session where I would like for you to put your questions in the chat, even though we sort of have this discussion, a very interesting discussion on archangels going on in the chat right now. Very interesting. But if you have any questions about mindfulness, please put them in the chat. And I will get to them right after I finish this section, so that way we can go straight into it, yeah? So thank you very much. Here we go. Some people cannot sit in practice. There are going to be those of you who don't really believe that they can do a sitting meditation practice. They need something a little more active. While I would implore everybody to try meditation, I understand that it is something that people cannot always do for any number of excellent reasons. Because of this, I'd like to suggest 5 alternatives to meditation and explain how you can make any activity a mindfulness development course. Here are 5 examples. Walking, solitary sports like golf, martial arts, reading, gentle movements like swaying side to side, and mantras. All of those things are alternatives to silent practice that can be good alternatives to meditation if necessary. But all this to say, meditation is preferred for a few reasons. Meditation is simple and has no other factors to consider than the teachings in the 5 C's. There isn't any baggage attached to meditation. No judgments are necessary, like there may be with sports. It's equal opportunity, barring physical or mental disabilities. And if that's the case, then there are alternatives. And lastly, you can work on these skills in a vacuum. And then you can take these tools to the street. Mindfulness is worthless if you keep it on the cushion. And so that's the end of the formal workshop. I am hopeful that you have enjoyed learning about mindfulness and relating it to the practical steps you can take, and also relating it to the lore in the Jedi compass. And I've allowed for a few minutes of questions here. And I don't really see anything in the chat yet. I'm sure that I didn't cover everything. I also have prepared a couple of things that I can talk about freehand until, oh good, thank you, Seamus. He says, thank you, Conrad. That was good, thank you. Okay, so here's one question. Will mindfulness really make my life better? What research has been done that explicitly says these things will improve my quality of life? So, you know, I think that people are right to be skeptical of meditation and all things mindfulness in general. But you might look into what the studies have recently shown. Did you know that there was a study, and I don't remember where it was done, but I can find out if anybody wants to know, that they put experienced meditators and a control group, beginning meditators, into an MRI, a functional MRI, and took images of the brain. And the meditators who had been meditating for over 10,000 hours in their lifetime showed increased activity in their brain. But they also noticed that there were a group of spots in the brain that were shut down. And these group of spots in the brain that were shut down are called the default mode network. And the default mode network is this part of the brain that activates when you aren't really thinking about anything in particular. It sort of is just your default sense of brain. It's your brain kind of doing its thing. And when they saw that the experienced meditators had shut this down, they realized that meditation, one of its big techniques, is silencing the noise of the mind and focusing it on certain specific areas, increasing parts of the brain related with growth, which I think is pretty excellent. Mindfulness and meditation have been shown to reduce medical factors, biomarkers such as blood pressure, reducing blood pressure, reducing heart rate. When your blood pressure is lower, your mind is smarter. Seamus says there's a great course from the Great Courses called Practicing Mindfulness, an Introduction to Meditation. Thank you. Amazing. I'm actually a big fan of the Great Courses myself. I am taking one of their classes right now on the history of Japan. And maybe I'll give one more question a go. Do you have any resources for people wanting to look into mindfulness without tying it to a religious or spiritual tradition? What about people who don't want to pray to Buddha in order to make their lives better? I would say that if you're looking for a methodology of meditation that is not related to a religious affiliation, I suggest starting with mindfulness-based stress reduction from UCLA. John Kabat-Zinn has developed this meditation in partnership with the Mayo Clinic. And you can just look up MBSR meditation online, and you'll have all sorts of resources that will point you in the right direction there. Okay, Allie said, you mentioned it doesn't do any good if you keep it on the pillow. Meditation itself can have great value, and hopefully you recognize the reference. You and I have met someone which seemed to gain no value from meditation while trying to get into a 10,000 program to learn John Chang's healing program. What do you think prevented him from gaining anything from it? You know what, Allie? I know exactly about whom you're speaking. And honestly, I think that while he did develop some aspects of mindfulness, he did not develop all of them. you may have noticed that he was big lacking in the compassion department. And he was big lacking in the composure department. And big lacking in the circulation department. He was so focused that he didn't take his stuff and apply it to the rest of his life. And the things that he did apply to his rest of his life were not informed by compassion and were not informed by developing composure. And therefore, he developed unbalanced mindfulness. And that led him to be hyper-focused on, developing superpowers. And because his focus was mismanaged, he came off as a little crazy and a little bit off kilter, and definitely not Jedi, even though he insisted he was like the only one of us. Good, Christopher, I'm glad. He was just saying that he was keeping track of his biomarkers, and they started to drop. Very nice. Yeah, I absolutely do, Allie. She says, do you believe it's because he wasn't directed beyond the second C? I absolutely do. I think that if you develop all 5 Cs, that you develop a sense of balance that keeps you grounded and keeps you connected to the Force. And when you go off kilter, when you focus only on the first 2, and you take them, see the difference between what I was saying earlier. I was saying, you could spend the rest of your life working on the first C or working on the second C. The difference here is that his Mopai instructions, remember, he was always talking about how he only got to like level 1 or level 2, but there are like 72 levels. Something tells me that the other 70 levels may have addressed the other aspects of the Cs. Yeah, 72, exactly. And I think that if he had moved through the rest of those levels and gotten the direct training, those other aspects may have been involved. But also remember, I also believe it's because he was trying to develop powers that are supernatural, and I'm not exactly sure if supernatural development is real. I don't know how to say that in a way that's diplomatic. But I think that oh, you're welcome. I think that his misdirected focus is dangerous, which is why it's important to temper your focuses, your foci, if you will, with the right action and the right decision making, as they would say in Buddhism, or temper it with Christ-minded thinking, like they would say in Christianity. It's important to always have some sort of compass, if you will, to help guide your decision making. Okay, I think that's all we need to do for today. I think that is excellent. We're about an hour and a half in. I think everybody's tired. I think we've covered the subject exhaustively. I am happy to take questions about this subject the rest of the weekend. And thank you very much for coming. And I will take us out of lecture mode now.